Chapter 1. The Smirk. The first time I realized Doug Merritt didn't respect me, he was halfway through a joke. It was at a teen lunch, one of those casual off-site things meant to boost morale, but really just gave managers like Doug a stage. I was walking back from the restroom when I heard my name, not shouted, just dropped casually mid-sentence. I paused, just outside the room, out of view, but well within earshot. "He's a nice enough guy," Doug was saying, his voice riding that thin line between friendly and dismissive. "But let's be honest, Andre's dead weight. Solid with spreadsheets, sure, but not exactly leadership material." Laughter. Not the kind that shakes walls, the kind that stings because it sounds like agreement. Someone chimed in, low and laughing. "Hey, every team needs a bench warmer." I didn't walk in right away. I stood there, hand tightening around my phone, and let the words settle. They weren't surprising, not really, just clarifying. Doug always smiled at me in meetings, always started emails with "appreciate you" and ended them with too many exclamation points. But now I had the truth, not in writing, but in tone. And it wasn't new, this kind of dismissal. People had been underestimating me for years. I wasn't flashy. I didn't dominate meetings or interrupt to make my point. I listened more than I spoke, observed before I moved. That made certain people nervous, especially men like Doug, who mistook performance for power. Doug had been my manager for just under a year. I'd transferred into his team from another division, looking for growth, challenge, upward mobility. On paper, it made sense, but from day one, it felt off. Subtle things, projects reassigned at the last minute, credit quietly redirected, performance reviews that praised my attitude but questioned my initiative. I'd spent my whole career walking a tightrope, trying to be competent but not threatening, helpful but not invisible. I'd told myself it was about the long game, build trust, let my work speak. But standing in that hallway, listening to my boss call me dead weight between bites of steak, something snapped into place. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't miscommunication. Doug didn't just underestimate me. He needed to, because if I ever got taken seriously by the people above him, he'd be exposed for exactly what he was, a man holding on to power he hadn't earned. So I walked into that lunch, sat back down at the table, smiled like I hadn't heard a thing, and started building my exit plan. Not to leave, to rise. Chapter 2. The Paper Trail. The next morning, I bought a notebook. Not a digital doc, not an app, a real one. Black leather cover, thick paper, the kind of thing you'd buy for journaling. But I wasn't writing affirmations. I was building a record. I didn't tell anyone. Not my coworkers, not HR, not even Maya, the one person on the team who always made space at the table, who passed me the mic in meetings, even when Doug cut me off mid-sentence. I kept the notebook in my backpack, tucked behind my laptop sleeve. Every time Doug made a joke that landed just a little too sharp, every time he changed a project brief after the deadline, then blamed me for not reading his mind, every time he sent an email and CC'd a senior leader just to point out something I supposedly missed, I wrote it down. Date, time, context, tone. Not because I thought it would lead to some dramatic confrontation, but because I knew how stories get rewritten in rooms I wasn't invited into. Doug played the game well. He was good at charm, at optics, at painting himself as the tough but fair leader who just wanted the best for his team. And guys like him, they didn't get caught because they didn't leave fingerprints, just bruises. I wasn't planning revenge, not yet. I just wanted a record, in case things got worse. In case I ever needed to prove I wasn't crazy. Still, a small part of me hoped it might shift. That maybe Doug would surprise me. That maybe if I just performed better, sharper, faster, I could change the story. But that week, he sent back a report I'd spent 14 hours cleaning and refining. All he wrote in the margin was, "Try again, this is sloppy." No guidance, no clarification, just the sting. So I stapled that version to the inside of the notebook. Then the next version. Then the email chain that proved I followed his edits exactly. One by one, I stitched the narrative together. Quietly, carefully. Because if he was going to make me invisible, I was going to make myself undeniable. Chapter 3. Unofficial Warnings. Doug didn't fire bullets. He cut with paper. By week 4, I noticed the pattern. No direct confrontation, just sudden silence in group chats. No invites to meetings I used to lead. Project decks passed on without my name. Comments that looked neutral on paper, but carried teeth in the room. I just figured you were too swamped. I assumed you'd want to take a back seat on this one. Let's loop Andre in later. I think this one's a little beyond his bandwidth. Each sentence was a matchstick, flicked casually, carelessly, into the space I used to own. He didn't need to scream I was incompetent. He was curating the illusion, a campaign built on plausible deniability and careful omissions. At first, I second-guessed everything. Maybe I was under-delivering. Maybe I wasn't proactive enough. But the truth had a way of showing up when you least expected it. It showed up in the break room, actually. Marcos Lin, senior analyst, quiet but sharp. He was 2 days away from leaving the company when he caught me by the coffee machine. "You working under Doug now?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," I said. 3 months in. He gave a dry chuckle and sipped his coffee. "Don't take it personally. He plays that same playbook every time. Picks someone smart, drains them, then rewrites the story when things go south." I blinked. "He's done this before?" "3 times I know of. He grooms scapegoats like it's a rotation. But you?" He squinted at me. "You document everything, don't you?" I didn't confirm, didn't deny, just held his gaze. "Smart," Marcos said. "You'll need it, especially if he starts going for your review file." Mine got edited after I left. Subtle stuff, just enough to poison the well. I swallowed hard. I hadn't even thought about that. Retroactive edits. Narrative damage after the fact. If Doug was willing to sabotage quietly while I was present, what would he do once I was out of the building? Marcos walked away with a nod, but left behind a warning I couldn't unhear. He doesn't just try to ruin your job, he tries to rewrite your career. That night, I added 2 new sections to the notebook. One titled Retaliation Patterns, the other Reputation Prep. Because if he wanted a story, I was going to write the truth and date every page. Chapter 4, The Exit Interview. Exit interviews were usually a formality. Most people smiled, nodded, gave vague feedback, and walked out with their dignity and a signed NDA. But when Gina from HR asked if I had 10 minutes to talk, just to support the transition of a departing team member, I didn't hesitate. The team member? Devin Wu. Devin had been one of the most capable operations leads we had. Smart, fast, solution-oriented, and she always seemed tired. Not in a lazy way, in the way people look when they're constantly carrying extra weight no one acknowledges. She sat across from me in the small glass-walled conference room. It was her last day. Her badge clipped to her pocket. Laptop already turned in. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," she said as soon as Gina stepped out. "Doug's the reason I'm leaving." I blinked. "You're saying that to me?" "I've said it in every form I can. Anonymously, in reviews, in exit surveys. Doesn't matter. No one touches him." I didn't say anything. Just let the silence stretch. Devin leaned in. "He did to you what he did to me. And Marcos. And Priya before that. Isolation, slow erasure, then strategic blame." I felt the hairs on my arms stand up. Devin slid a folded paper across the table. "It's not much, just a printout. But you'll want to keep it." I opened it. It was a timestamped screenshot, a Slack thread from 3 months ago. Doug blaming a botched workflow on me. The thing was, I hadn't even been staffed on that workflow. "He deletes and edits threads when he knows he's sloppy," Devin said. "But I kept that one before he nuked it. Backed up the day I decided to leave." I looked up. "Why me?" She gave a tired smile. "Because I think you'll actually use it. The rest of us just want it out." I didn't say thank you. Didn't promise revenge. Just folded the printout, tucked it behind my notebook pages, and walked out of the room with something new burning under my ribs. Resolve. Doug didn't just mess with employees. He erased them. And this time, one of us was keeping the receipts. Chapter 5. The Lateral Move. On paper, it looked like I was stepping down. The new role didn't come with a raise. It was technically a lateral shift. Same level, different department. The kind of move people make when they've outgrown their current challenges, according to the sanitized HR language. But let's be real. Everyone saw it for what it was. A quiet exit, a soft shuffle out of Doug's orbit. Proof to some that maybe he'd been right all along. Looks like he couldn't hack it. Someone muttered in the hallway when they thought I was out of earshot. Doug didn't say much, just gave me that classic pitying smile, clapped me on the back during my farewell from his team, and said, "Hey, sometimes a reset is good for people." He meant it as a dig, but I let it hang in the air, because I wasn't resetting, I was rerouting. The truth was, the new department had something Doug's didn't. Autonomy. No micromanagement, no daily sabotage, no Doug. Instead, I got handed a small team, a stack of chaotic projects, and one clear directive from my new boss, Valerie Cross. Fix what's broken. I trust your judgment. Valerie didn't babysit. She didn't perform leadership. She did it. Which meant, if I earned her trust, I'd be left to lead without interference. It was the oxygen I'd been gasping for. Within 2 weeks, I had the team back on track. Within 2 months, we were outperforming Doug's department in both delivery time and client satisfaction. Quietly, consistently, without the drama. And all the while, I kept collecting emails, reports, praise from internal partners, project metrics, performance snapshots. Not to brag, to prepare, because I wasn't interested in proving Doug wrong. I was interested in making sure he didn't do it to anyone else again. And the only way to do that was to build a resume so undeniable that even Doug would have to look me in the eye one day and submit something for my approval. Chapter 6. The Quiet Build. I didn't talk much during meetings those days. Not because I didn't have ideas, but because I'd learned that the loudest person in the room isn't always the one driving the agenda. Sometimes it's the person listening, observing, drawing lines no one else sees. That's what I was doing. My new department didn't look flashy on the org chart, but it was strategic. We touched multiple business units. If something broke, our team either fixed it or found out who was responsible. It meant access, insight, reach. And I made sure I earned all of it. I stayed late, cleaned up inherited messes, rewrote outdated playbooks. I never bragged. I just delivered, and then quietly documented the results. When Valerie Cross, my new director, asked how the backlog looked after week 3, I showed her a real-time dashboard I'd built over the weekend. She blinked at it. "We've needed this since before I took this seat," she said. "How did no one think to do this before?" I didn't answer, but I could name at least one guy who never would have let anyone else shine that bright. The more I built, the more I realized how Doug had stunted me, not just professionally, but mentally. I'd internalized his voice without knowing it, second-guessed my instincts, held back to avoid looking arrogant, watered down my own presence. But with Valerie, the silence was different. It wasn't dismissive, it was space. And when she did speak, it mattered. "You should lead this next planning cycle," she said one Friday after I'd wrapped a cross-functional brief. "We need someone who can handle both systems and people." That wasn't just a compliment. That was succession language. Meanwhile, I started getting strange messages, not from Doug, from people around him. A project manager on his team reached out to grab coffee and pick my brain. A marketing liaison, someone who'd ignored me for months, suddenly wanted to collaborate on a future initiative. And then there was a forwarded calendar invite I wasn't even meant to see, a planning session Doug had scheduled, using my original restructure model. He was sniffing around now, realizing I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And maybe worse, I wasn't doing it through noise, I was doing it through numbers, through metrics that showed up in the company-wide dashboard, through recommendations sent directly to the C-suite. Doug had always been good at politics, but he'd underestimated the one thing that would outrun him in the end: results. And those don't stay quiet forever. Chapter 7. All eyes on him. The first time I realized people were watching him instead of me, it came in a side comment, one of those throwaway lines that meant more than it let on. We were in a cross-department sync, reviewing timelines for a major system overhaul. I wasn't running the meeting, but I'd submitted the framework that got us there. My plan, my metrics. Doug was supposed to present the resource impacts from his division. He stumbled, blamed staffing, blamed upstream miscommunication, and then Valerie cut in. Doug, are you saying your team hasn't implemented the project guidelines Andre submitted? They've been live for 3 weeks. Doug tried to recover. Oh, we've partially adopted them, but we're tailoring them to our unique structure. Valerie didn't blink. What part of the structure is unique, exactly? Silence. Doug muttered something about needing more time. The call moved on, but the air had changed. Afterward, I got a Slack from Daniel Price, the SVP. He looked unprepared. You didn't. Let's chat next week. That's when I knew. I wasn't the one being assessed anymore. Doug was, and I hadn't said a word. From that point forward, things shifted quickly. Doug's updates grew more frantic. He started showing up to optional meetings, volunteering for initiatives he used to ignore. The swagger started to crumble, replaced by a kind of frantic professionalism that screamed insecurity. Meanwhile, I started getting pulled into bigger rooms. Daniel asked me to contribute to a cross-regional audit on operational flow. Valerie forwarded an internal nomination form for an executive development program, 1 tier below VP. And in every conversation, the tone had changed. People didn't ask if I could lead anymore. They asked when I'd be ready. Doug could feel it. I saw it in the way he avoided eye contact, the way he overcompensated in meetings, like a man realizing the tide was pulling away from his feet, and the only thing beneath him was sand. He tried, once, to meet me halfway, caught me in the hallway, smiled like old times. Hey, just wanted to say, you're really finding your groove in that new role. Looks good on you. I met his gaze, appreciate that, and walked right past him, because I didn't need his approval anymore. The people who mattered had already seen the difference. And they weren't looking at me like I had something to prove. They were looking at Doug like he had something to explain. Chapter 8. The Reorg. Reorgs usually smell like fear. People get twitchy. Calendars fill up with one-on-ones. Whispered hallway conversations bloom like weeds. Everyone starts watching for the signs. Who's updating their LinkedIn? Who's suddenly cordial? Who's in rooms they've never been in before? But me, I was calm. Because while everyone else was scrambling for a seat at the table, I'd been building the table. Quietly, brick by brick, metric by metric. It started with a late Friday email from Valerie. Subject line, transition plans, confidential. Inside was a brief mention of structural changes to streamline operations. Beneath that, a list of proposed leadership roles in the new org model. And next to one of them, under Executive Director, Enterprise Process and Ops, Andre Kellum, proposed. My throat tightened. I reread it 3 times, then once more, just to feel it sink in. Executive Director. 2 levels above my current role, and 1 level above Doug. It wasn't official yet. The org chart was still in flux, but the seed had been planted, and from what I could tell, Doug had no idea. He still acted like he had leverage, still floated in and out of meetings with that same easy performative confidence, but now he was late to updates, missed deadlines, threw junior analysts under the bus when questions came from above. The cracks were no longer subtle. They were visible, audible, and senior leadership, they were noticing. I wasn't in the room when the decision got finalized, but I heard about it 2 days later from Gina in HR, who stopped me in the hallway with a raised brow. You ready for this? She asked. I didn't ask what she meant. I just nodded. The official announcement came that Friday, a company-wide email, new structure, new titles, new reporting lines, and there it was, under the section marked Promotions and Appointments. Andre Kellum, Executive Director, Enterprise Process and Operations, reporting to Daniel Price, SVP, Strategy and Systems. Doug's name wasn't under mine. It was beneath mine. He now reported to me. And the best part? I didn't say a single word. No back-channeling, no politicking, just results. And now the same man who once called me dead weight was about to find out whose name was on his next performance review. Chapter 9. Promotion Material. I walked into the Monday leadership meeting 10 minutes early, not to make a statement, to get a feel for the room. It was bigger than the old conference space. Glass walls, high ceilings, a sleek touchscreen monitor that stretched across half the wall. These were the meetings Doug used to name drop like they were private clubs. Now I had a permanent seat. My nameplate was already waiting at the table. Andre Kellum, Executive Director. I ran my fingers across the letters once. Then I sat down. Doug came in late, not by much. 3 minutes, maybe. But enough to draw eyes, enough to feel it. He paused when he saw me. Not a stumble, just a flicker. That split second where your brain recognizes a shift before your ego catches up. Then he kept walking, took a seat 2 spots down, and adjusted his blazer like the room hadn't changed. But it had. Daniel Price opened the meeting with a warm welcome, called out the new leadership structure, and then turned to me. "Andre, want to kick us off?" That moment, that pivot, the passing of gravity in the room. Doug didn't look at me as I stood, but everyone else did. I walked them through the first 60-day roadmap, timeline, restructuring plan, pain points. I spoke clearly, confidently, no fluff, just facts, because I didn't need to perform. I belonged there now. Afterward, as the meeting broke and people scattered, Doug approached me. "Hey," he said, half smile in place. "Congrats. Big move." I nodded. "Appreciated." He hesitated. "Listen, I'd love to chat sometime. Catch up. Talk through some of the transition stuff. Maybe even clear the air." There it was, the first crack in his armor. I looked at him, really looked. And then I said, "Sure, send me time slots. My assistant will coordinate." Then I turned and walked away, because Doug wasn't the one dictating access anymore. He wasn't evaluating me. He was trying to keep up. And now, he was the one with something to prove. Chapter 10. The Return. I didn't rush the site visit. There was no announcement, no dramatic entrance, just a quiet Friday walkthrough of Doug's old floor, the department I used to work in, the place where I'd been minimized, dismissed, erased, one harmless joke at a time. Now I was back, but not as a peer, not as a team lead, as their new executive. The walk from the elevator to the operations wing felt shorter than I remembered. Maybe because the fear was gone. Maybe because the weight Doug used to carry had always been performative. All puff, no spine. Marla, the project coordinator who used to avoid eye contact when Doug barked at her, perked up when she saw me. "Mr. Kellum, Andre," she corrected quickly, flustered. "Welcome back." I smiled. "It's good to be back." A few others glanced up from their monitors. The vibe wasn't tense, just uncertain. Like people waiting to see if this was just a formality or something that might actually stick. Doug wasn't on site that day. His calendar showed remote focus blocks, which I suspected meant hiding. Maybe it was strategic, or maybe he just couldn't stomach watching me take the seat he used to covet. But his legacy? That was still here. And it looked tired. Metrics were stale. Feedback scores were low. Attrition had spiked. I'd read the reports, but seeing it in person hit different. These weren't numbers. These were people left behind. I pulled Marla aside before I left. "How honest can I be?" she asked. I gave her a look. Completely. She took a breath. Doug drained the room, made us doubt ourselves. Every win felt temporary. Every mistake felt fatal. I nodded. Noted, "We're rebuilding that." She looked relieved, hopeful even. "We?" I nodded again. "We." Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about repair. Doug had hollowed out the place to prop himself up. Now it was time to build something solid and leave no room for men like him to hide. Chapter 11. The Review Cycle. The performance review landed in my inbox with a subject line so ordinary it almost made me laugh. Subject: Q3 leadership feedback, pending final input. Inside, a familiar format: columns, metrics, comments. But the name at the top of the form stopped me. Doug Merritt, Director, Business Ops. For years, that name had been my ceiling. Now it was just a line item in my pipeline. I read it once through like a stranger, then again like a historian, looking for evidence, for patterns, for the rot beneath the paint. Doug's self-evaluation was classic Doug. Glossy, buzzword-heavy, carefully crafted to deflect attention from the gaps. Every shortcoming was framed as a cross-functional learning opportunity. Every delay was someone else's alignment challenge. But the numbers didn't lie. Project delivery was behind. Retention had dropped. Engagement scores tanked. Worse than that, I found something else, buried in a footnote. An initiative Doug claimed credit for that he didn't start. The very workflow update Devin Wu had piloted before she left. He'd scrubbed her name, rewritten the timeline, and presented it as his own. That was the line. Not because of the theft, but because of the erasure. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. This was the moment I'd fantasized about, the justice, the reckoning, the chance to reduce him to a rating, the way he'd once done to me. But that's not what I did. I didn't slash his score out of spite. I didn't inflate it out of pity. I told the truth. Clear, detailed, professional. I cited metrics, quoted anonymous team feedback, linked audit trails and decision logs. I made the case, not just for performance concerns, but for a pattern of behavior that posed a leadership risk. I submitted the review. No flourish, no note, just facts. The fallout? That would come, but for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone else to fix it. Doug's era was ending, and this time it would be documented. Chapter 12, The Reckoning. It didn't happen in a town hall. There was no dramatic announcement, no flashing red flag, just a Tuesday morning calendar update, personnel review follow-up, closed session. Doug was still logged into Slack when it hit. I saw his green light flicker on, off, then on again. A heartbeat of hesitation. I didn't attend the meeting. Didn't need to. I'd already submitted everything. The timeline, the pattern, the corroboration. HR had what they needed. The SVP had already asked his one quiet question a week earlier. Is there anyone on his team still thriving under him? There wasn't. By 11:43 a.m., Doug's name disappeared from the org directory. No goodbye email. No farewell donuts in the break room. Just gone. The whispers started almost immediately. What happened? Was it a reorg thing? Did you know this was coming? I didn't answer. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I just went back to work, because revenge wasn't the point. Restoration was. 3 days later, Marla sent me a Slack message. I saw the update. Thank you, for all of us. It was the shortest message I got that week, and the one I saved. Doug's departure wasn't an ending. It was a clearing. An overdue shift that let the rest of us finally breathe without second-guessing every step. And me? I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. Because when someone calls you dead weight, and you become the one holding their future in your hands, you don't scream. You document. You build. You wait. And then you let their story collapse under the weight of your receipts. Epilogue, the quietest win. 3 months later, I got an email from someone I didn't recognize. Subject, I used to work under Doug too. It was short, just a thank you. No details, no rants, just a note from someone who'd been erased, forgotten, discarded, like so many before me. But this time, someone had kept the door open behind them. I didn't reply right away. I sat with it, because that was the real win. Not the promotion, not the corner office, not even the quiet HR update that finally ended Doug's tenure. The win was in the restoration, the shift in tone across the department, the way new hires asked questions freely, the way feedback actually flowed up, not just down, the way people started showing up like they mattered. And me, I still keep the folder, all the screenshots, the notebook, the timeline, not out of spite, out of memory. Because what Doug tried to do to me, he did to others, and people like him don't stop unless someone documents the truth. I didn't burn bridges. I built a lighthouse. So the next time someone in his position tries to erase a voice like mine, or Devin's, or Marcos's, or anyone who dares to care while being competent, they'll find out too late. We're still here. And we're not waiting to be believed anymore.
Thanks so much for watching. If you love a good revenge story, or if you've ever dreamed of getting the last word without saying much at all, you're in the right place. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new savage ending. Because around here, karma always hits different.